Hi YouTube. I just spent the last hour and a half collecting data about the last debate from last night. I was very upset with how it seemed that it was a slapshot show between Romney and Perry, and the rest of the candidates really didn't have too much of a chance to put their views in on a lot of the issues that they were throwing to the top tier candidates. So I went ahead and made an Excel graph, and I went through the entire debate, counting down the seconds and adding them up, and as you can see, I have the data behind that of the whole thing. So anyway, it's pretty obvious that Rick Perry is who they want to ask questions to, as he responded 23 times. And under questions, it wasn't necessarily it was how many times questions were asked, it was how many times the moderators let that particular congressman or congresswoman or governor, whatever, talk. So if it was a rebuttal, if it was a, chipe in just a few seconds of, screaming obscenities or whatever it might have been, it was recorded down to the second. So in looking at this, you can see that Rick Perry was asked 23 questions, or allowed to speak 23 times, versus some candidates only got 6 or 7. I was actually a little bit more surprised, because of course I was doing this to promote Ron Paul and how screwed up MSNBC is, but Ron Paul did come in third as far as seconds go and how long he was allowed to talk about what they wanted to talk about. Unfortunately, they weren't including Ron Paul in talks like healthcare, or, because he's a doctor, you might know a few things, or, more on foreign policy, or what, the rest of the candidates were allowed to talk about. More or less, every time that they brought up something to Ron Paul, it was just like, see, he is crazy. We're only going to talk about things that people don't understand. And hopefully that'll just mean that it'll reinforce our support of Rick Perry and Mitt Romney. Pretty well disgusted still, because of the fact not only is it not about how many questions a candidate was asked, not how many times they were allowed to talk, or how many seconds they were allowed to talk, but the fact that, the issues that they were covering and handed to Ron Paul were actually absolutely horrible. But not that Ron Paul isn't capable of answering these questions. It's just, I think if they would have been like, well, Rick Perry, go on about something that, makes you kind of look like a weirdo, and Ron Paul, here, why don't you put a rebuttal on that and make him seem like a fool? Well, that didn't happen. The most that ever went back and forth between Ron Paul and Perry was a comment about Perry flip-flopping from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, and Perry stating that, well, at least I didn't turn my back on the party, which obviously I don't even understand why you would even bring that up. If you read that letter, which I have a video that I just uploaded today about that letter, it was the same thing in that letter saying what was wrong with the Republican Party, which he didn't turn his back on Reagan. He turned his back on the Republican Party because of things that were happening where they were doubling the budget and putting up everyone, working their way up to what was leading up to the economic situation that we're in today. And, it's funny because it's something that Ron Paul could have picked up that piece of paper that he wrote to the Republican Party and read it verbatim, and pretty much every single thing that he said was wrong with the Republican Party back then is still wrong with the Republican Party today. And, I think he's a fool for even bringing that up. But at any rate, go read that letter, because it's really, it's surprising how, something like that can be brought into a debate without, and everyone just being like, oh, it must be true and it must be bad. No, you should really go read the letter, because the fact that it talks about foreign policy and everything else, and pretty much hands it straight up and you read through it and you can say, yeah, Ron Paul, that makes sense. I understand why you went to it being independent, but, unfortunately, no one was in the position to bring that up, and Ron Paul, briefly said, stated somewhat what was in the letter, but, you would have to read the thing to really understand it, and, it's, I think it's funny that, Perry would have brought it up. So, anyway, time in seconds. Rick Perry talked the longest for 22%, which was 950 seconds, or I believe he had 12 minutes right on the dot. And let's see, Mitt Romney was at 10:34, and followed by third place Ron Paul with 9:17. So, even though it seemed like Ron Paul didn't talk about as much as he wanted to, or anything he really wanted to, he was able to speak more than, everyone except for Bachmann, Romney, and Perry. So, questions asked again. I think this should have been more leveled. It wasn't, and, it just seemed like MSNBC, who to me has more of a bias against the GOP. It's funny that they were making him the beautiful person of the neighborhood on this particular debate. It could have been his trip to Sweden a couple months ago. So at any rate, here's the numbers if you want to check it out. It was a lot of work, so hopefully someone finds it enlightening and say, yeah, it's the mainstream media, what do you expect? So, and another entertaining aspect is, here's the finishing polls, and Ron Paul still came ahead 52% above everybody. So thanks for watching.